called. Would you talk a little bit about how you perceive the idea of tolerance? What does that even mean to you? Anybody can start. I'll just leave it open.
Okay, this is Betty. I had an impression in my mind years ago that if you were tolerant, that was a good thing to tolerate. And I saw it as a step toward being acknowledging and tolerating people who are different. And over these years, I've come to realize that tolerance is not what I want to have. I want to accept and include and be part of humanity instead of judgmental, which I kind of thought tolerant was a judgment word at that time. Mm-hmm. And this is different from what we're looking at today. It's all really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's interesting to get a baseline though and get an understanding of how you're feeling about it, because that way it'll position us to understand better the different points of view about the, being tolerant of intolerance. Anybody else have anything that they would like to share about what you feel? What is it about tolerance? What does it mean to you?
Just a couple. Sorry.
I thought that video was very well done. And the thing that really comes right out blaring to me is the importance of balance. And then how far you want to tolerate things. And that is your own personal judgment, but it also is your own personal values of other human beings. I think it's important to understand things that you are intolerant of and understand the people that are doing it, which is more of an analytic type thing, because some people act in certain ways because of their own insecurities, hate for something. And I'm always thinking, where are they coming? Why are they feeling that way? So I think it's a case that we all must think deeply and knowledgeably about what we tolerate or not.
Mm-hmm.
A balance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Anyone else?
Yes, unbeknownst to how I do things all the time, I want to put a wrench in there, because I am, well, my avatar is my little girl Fancy. I'm a horsewoman along with everything else. But I want to present the fact, even though you can't see me, all of you know I'm an African American woman, and it's our month. It's our day every day anyway. So I want to be able to say that I have a problem with the concept of tolerance, because I feel that people are tolerant of my race, tolerant of my femininity, or there's another word, womanhood or whatever. And I find that being tolerant is like, yeah, okay, fine, you can go. I'll let you in this time. And I would prefer to be embraced instead of tolerated. The United States is a melting pot. I don't want to get in there. I'm not soup. I am a salad, and I'm the cherry daggone tomato, okay? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I move into a hot pepper, hate chili. But the thing is, tolerance, or being tolerant of, in some ways, is a form of not accepting and just saying, okay, yeah, all right, fine. And I prefer, yeah, come on, all right, let's go have fun. Can I roll you down the hill, tomato? Cucumber, you following? That's what I would prefer. And that's my preference. because people have been tolerant with me for a long time, and they don't really, it's not about acceptance. It's just about being open and being tolerant to me. And that's my experience. Tolerant to me is not open, or hasn't been open, except for here. You all tolerate me and I love it.
Okay, anybody else? Paul, you look like you had something to say before.
Well, actually, one of the things I was going to say is open-mindedness, as well as compassion. Additionally, or just a couple words that had come to mind that are certainly not all inclusive of what tolerance is, but just a couple other synonyms, or at least partial synonyms for me.
Mhm. Anyone else? Well, while you're getting your thoughts together, assuming that's what's happening, I would like to just sort of expand on what you guys are saying. I think all of those things are personal things, and they are your definitions and your working definitions and your working experiences with tolerance. Um, if we're going to talk about tolerance relative to intolerant, one of the things that we have to do is view it not just from what happens to us or what happens even with us between another person, but a systemic expectation, right? So when I say systemic expectation, it's like for many nation states, they're built with basically tribes and families. And so, as we've discussed here before, there's some kind of limit to like how many people you can actually have some kind of serious relationship with, just as a matter of like uh, cerebral limitations. It's just a fact that we can only there's a number, whatever number you want to put it at. You don't have an infinite amount of energy, time, emotional resources, et cetera, to deal with everybody. So the question is, what do you do with those people who are not in that circle that you feel comfortable with? Now, on the surface, it may just seem like a philosophical kind of discussion, but when you look at like wars and other, how can I say, other kind of uh, problems in societies, they often come because we don't have tolerance, or we don't have like um, a way to interact with those other people in some productive way. So it becomes something more than just a philosophical discussion in terms of like, well, how do we balance tolerance versus intolerance? As the video alluded to, in every interaction, with anybody, there's going to be some things that we like about those people, and there's going to be some things that maybe not so much. And then there are some things it's like, well, I just can't hang with that, you know. And maybe we're not going to attack those people, but then maybe we do want to, let's say, restrict their ability to affect us and to affect others that we love, or to make the society, let's say, malfunction. Okay, so that's where our tolerance comes in. Okay, so you can let tolerance versus intolerance. You can let people do whatever they want, but at some point when you do that, they can do things that make it impossible for others to exist, or for others to function well, or for the whole system to work. So once we do that, we say, well, okay, we're going to have laws, we're going to have rules. And when we have the rules themselves suggest that we're not going to tolerate certain kind of behaviors. That's essentially what laws do. So that we always have to balance this tolerance versus intolerance. So that brings the question, what do you feel that balance should be? How should that balance, how should we approach creating that balance between tolerance and intolerance? So I'll open that question up to you guys.
I think that puts a lot of onus on us in that we need to have actions or plans that we can use. All of us know ourselves pretty well. And what are some of the things you could do that you feel comfortable in facing the problem? And on a personal level, mine is that I just am so curious about other people's backgrounds, and they're wonderful, interesting. So I basically interrogate them, you know, probing questions like, oh, why do you do, what do you hope to achieve? Or how does that work better for you? Or something like that. I do want to comment, Lawrence, on what you said earlier about you find out about people, but you also become more aware of that they are, I call them downers, that drag you down with him or her, which does not mean that you're cruel, that you ignore them, but you might not seek them out on a daily basis or whatever. But it isn't an easy task. I just enjoy doing it. It's almost like it's one of those risks I want to take. I like to know about people. Just met the mailman the other day. I want to know why he didn't have the route that walks up the high steps off of 18th Street there. And how do they pick their jobs? Well, the man was from Ethiopia, and he had such an interesting background there. And I just said, you got to work, but thank you. And he said, no one's ever stopped me before. And how do I say? I was just thrilled. And he just kind of said, thank you for talking. And I'm thinking, I wasn't afraid, but how do I say? That's what I like to do. I like to know about people and why they are the way they are. Thank you. And by the way, Paul, someone called me the other night and I was just floored. I knew the name, never met him before. And I was thrilled to death because he told me something very positive about Tom. And Tom didn't know him. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So anyone else, your thoughts on balancing tolerance and intolerance?
I agree that there's a lot of personal decisions involved in trying to find that balance, but that balance that we find is going to be different between people, and it's going to be affect people differently. I might find a balance and it's perfectly acceptable for one person, but it may not be acceptable for another one. And so, you know, we have my tolerance and my balance, but there are other people's balance and other people's tolerance. I'm like Lee. I love to hear people's stories. I like to know where they came from. I would love to know how this guy from Ethiopia, how he ended up in South Dakota. I mean, half a world away, you know. Yeah, that's got to be an interesting story. And I do know people that if I were to ask questions like that, they'd be offended because, for one thing, they'd misunderstand what my intentions. My intentions are just to hear people's stories, but they may interpret those intentions as me being judgmental or something like that, like you don't belong here or something like that. No, I just want to know how you got here because it's got to be interesting. And then so you have that you need to figure in, as well as finding your own balance. And so you have to try and read people a little bit too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a very valid points, Kurt. Very valid points. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just add, it's, you know, there might be some fundamentals of tolerance, but as it's applied to so many different situations and people and things and life, it becomes subjective and very personal. And so it's hard to, I think the question is define tolerance, but so for me, it just, I would maybe try to come up with a blanket sort of definition of it, but then I'd be like, but there's an exception here, there's an exception here. And that video did a really nice job of explaining that, and the comments that people have been making this morning too are contributing to that. So those are my thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the questions or invitations to participate is about definitions, but it's also about finding the balance between tolerance and intolerance. You know, so uh, I think, you know, the issue of the paradox of tolerance is whether or not, or to what degree, our tolerance of intolerance leads to intolerance. You know, that's kind of the focus of, you know, where we're going, is like to what degree that happens. And then how do we determine which things, like, no, I'm not going for that. You know, I'm not compromising with that particular point of view, you know, because a lot of times when people say, oh, we should be tolerant and we should be compromised, let the other guy have some of what he wants and we have some, but some people start at a position, I'm not ready to compromise with them, you know, because their position is such that if I meet them halfway, I've violated everything that I feel, and it doesn't work for me, you know. If they start at a position where they're looking for something that works for most people all of the time, in other words, they're starting at, well, I know I can't get everything that I want, but what do I need, and being really clear about that. uh, if they start there and they're looking at the interest of other people when at their starting point, then I feel, okay, yeah, I can try to meet, I can go there and we can work out the details, right? But if those people start with this group of people or that person has no value and their humanity does not need to be considered, then I'm sorry, I'm not going to be tolerant with that, you know. Well, actually, I'm not sorry. That's
And
a euphemism.
to me there's a lot of overlap in intolerance and hate, um, and maybe not perfect one for one, but in this, sort of the Venn diagram or the sliding scale of it, there would be, there would be it'd be shaded the same color. And so that kind of came to mind as you were just speaking, Lawrence.
Mhm. I think it's useful to recognize that the concept of tolerance as we practice it today really came out of the looking for a solution for the kind of religious wars and stuff like that people were just like, well, I'm Catholic, you're Protestant, let's go kill all those people and put them, boil them in oil or something if they don't go with our way. And then there was a let's say a philosophical point of view that, wait a minute, if these people are over here and they're worshiping Jesus in this way, and you don't go to hell for their sins, where's the problem? We don't have to fight about it. We may completely disagree, but there's no reason why we have to kill each other, in the name, two Christians kill each other in the name of Jesus, because this guy thinks you should eat fish on Friday and this one thinks you shouldn't, there's no reason for that. So let's just sort of let bygones be bygones, or just, let people do what they want to do and let Jesus sort it out, So then if you expand that to other ideas, like other religions or other groups, people come, and then you say, well, those people, they have their practices, and as long as they're not hurting us or hurting other people, let them do what they want to do. Do we have to care, so to speak? So that's where that sort of tolerance, it's kind of the beginning of trying to let's chill for a minute and not kill each other. But I think if we stop there, then we do ourselves a disservice. I think we have to go further than that. But today, it's really about, okay, how do we determine, even at that first step, which things are we going to be tolerant of? So I'm sorry, go ahead, Lee.
No, I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
One of the things before you start, I'm thinking that we need to look at the time, the place, the condition that this is happening. And I'm going this by my past experiences. For an example, when I would start my classes in the fall with students, I said, the 3 R's do not mean reading and writing and arithmetic. It means respect, responsibility, and resourcefulness.
Mm.
And we learned that throughout the year. And one of the words of respect was these were like 14, 15-year-old kids, to respect others.
Mm.
And we had quite some deep conversations about what we meant by respect. Well, even especially facial expressions and groans, if you're put in with a group and you have somebody say, oh, not her. I said, I have no tolerance for facial words, actions that are disrespectful for others. And there will be consequences, which are da, 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 da. And this was brought on, and it was amazing how it carried over into the hallways when I'd have duty, because I'd walk out there and that you didn't have this thing going on at the lockers. You didn't have that. And they said, we're going on the second R. So if that was a learning tool, I wanted them to know that needed to be done. But there again, that was a time and a place and an opportunity. And I think when we attack something or attacked it or want to solve that problem, we have to think about it. And that topic you brought up, I appreciate. It was the different religions. And it was interesting to see that and how many times we see that. Thank you.
Good morning, Crystal.
If I can maybe challenge Lee just a little bit with that. I think I agree with what she's saying, but when you start talking about individuals and cultures, for example, respect, showing respect is different in different cultures. To me, a glaring example is in our culture, the way I was raised, that when you're talking with someone in authority, you look at them, you look at their face, and you speak with them, and to look away, to not look at them is a sign of disrespect. In other cultures, it's just the opposite.
Mhm.
And so, you have to look at those different definitions, where people are coming from, and things like that too. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it comes down also to knowledge. I mean, to like, what do you know? Um, but one of the challenges I give to myself is to not expect other people to be seeing through my eyes and to be acting through my experiences as much as I would like them to, because it makes it easier for me. But I've had, and I still struggle with that. It's like not giving other people the responsibility of seeing through my eyes and feeling through my heart and acting through my experiences, because they haven't had those. And so if I expect them to do that, that's, as much as I would like it, they probably can't. And then I'll just be disappointed with them. So relative to tolerance, how much, where do I draw the line to say, okay, this person, I'm going to be intolerant, or I'm just not going to stand for them doing this, when they haven't had that experience and they don't really know life from my vantage point. So how intolerant should I be? And if I'm intolerant, if I can't tolerate a certain behavior, let's say, how do I nudge them into seeing something different? Because if I try to push them into it, chances are all I get is a reaction. So,
Lawrence,
yes.
you shame them on social media.
There you go. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, but that's one of the things. But it's still, we still get back to, like, what kind of things do you find, or where do you draw the line, or how do you draw your line between the things that you can tolerate and the things that you say, nah, not so much, not tolerating that, even before we decide what we're going to do about it. Betty, you were going to say something?
Well, I think it depends on what you're hoping to achieve. If it's a personal relationship, or if it's intolerance or tolerance for a group that's launching some program that you see it might be harmful, or at least just uncomfortable for you. A personal relationship, I feel, obviously has to start with your decision to try and communicate what you're feeling. And then, from there, you can find out, is the other person wanting to hear your feelings and wanting to explain their own? And, that can open doors beautifully if you can start by asking the other person to be more specific, and trying to find feeling words that will communicate. Um, I don't even want to go to the political legislative area today, but there's so much there that every year I find intolerable. But it is hard to feel that I can affect that, but I keep trying.
Mhm. Anyone else? Things that you find, how do you determine, like, what you will tolerate, whether on an individual level or in a systemic level? We're always making decisions about things that we will tolerate and not. How How do you draw the line? How do how do you think about that? Anybody?
I realized I kind of went right past the point that Lee made that, she said, I think we all kind of know ourselves, but that's not always the case either. I'm an old woman and I'm getting to the point where I know myself. So that's essential. I think if I'm going to try to negotiate my own tolerance level, mine used to be awfully, I don't know if it was low or high. I tolerated things that I should not have had I had a better concept of who I am and how I wanted to live my life.
Mhm. Crystal, you look like you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say that, um, but, I guess like I like what Betty said about, like as you get older. So like I'm going to be 60 here on Sunday, and my sister, well, we were talking about age, and she's like 67, but we're talking about tolerance, and she thinks that her thing is when you get older, um, you don't have to tolerate, you have a right to speak out more. That was her thing. She said, I'm older now. I can go to hear this meeting or that meeting. I could tell these young people what I think because they better listen to me. So, but
Good
I
luck
think,
with that.
yeah, I think, so that kind of comes with the respect of like who she is as an elder of our tribe. That's kind of what happens, like as far as like not looking, like the gentleman said about not looking somebody right in the eye or shaking their hand real hard, or just to be able to tolerate, like for me, I can tolerate, I have a high tolerance level for a lot of things, like I just take people as who they are. I've learned that who you are, I can't change your thoughts. I can't change anything about that. That's what you think and you believe. I just respect it, and I don't put it on myself. I don't like put a whole lot of thought into like trying to change who you are. And if our paths don't cross or are not meant for each other, then that's okay. Then you just go on your way and I go on my way with my opinion. You go your way with your opinion, and more power to the both of us. But like things that mean a lot, like like 15 years ago, my relatives were killed in a car crash. So a mom, her brother, all four of her babies, and a brother. So after that, I said, I'm not going to tolerate drunk driving in my community. That's one instance. So I started working with MAD campaign. I started speaking out and using my voice to send a message to people. And whoever I could reach even, if you even reach one person, I'm not gonna tolerate, drunk driving. I'm gonna make a noise about it. I'm gonna educate people. So that's kind of another thing that we do for community wise, talking about tolerance level. But if there's somebody next to me who's like, has a real negative attitude, and I think it's true, like all of us, when we talk about tolerance, or even you're having a conversation with a group of people and you don't like somebody else's opinion, I mean, you go into that conversation, like right now, we go into this conversation knowing that that's exactly what it is. It's just everyone is entitled to their own opinion based on your thoughts, your feelings, who you are, your life, and all that. So I just come in here into this room, and I'm here to listen, and I'm here hopefully to learn, and I keep an open mind. And it's always interesting, these conversations, because they always stick with me, about what everyone has to say about things. I'm still talking about the precise language. I'm still on that one from that first time, and that's taught me to really listen to what people are trying to say. And I'm like, is that really what they're trying to say, or what's the precise word that they should use to make it more noticeable or hear? But so I think tolerance is, I guess for me, it's just a level of of self, like
Mm.
where you can just accept somebody and not be like, make yourself sick over it. If I don't agree with your opinion, I don't want to go home at night and just like give myself a headache because Lawrence doesn't believe the same way I do, or I think he said something really dumb, or I don't think that's true. So I'm like, I just have to let it go, and that's a whole nother conversation about, like calming our inside of our minds and our hearts and our, being able to just be accepting. I think we need a lot of that tolerance teaching for our community, so we can accept each other. Your ways, my ways. I'm Native American, for the non-natives, that, the racism and things like that go on. Those are big issues, and that, I've tolerated a lot, but I just say, well, that's on them. That's your thing. That's not mine. I'm not taking it into myself. Whatever you're racist, or if you don't like this or that about me, that's you. I pray, let's just part ways then, and that's it. So interesting. Sorry, I came in. I was watching on Facebook though, before I got on.
Oh, before we got on here? Oh, good.
Yeah, so that was like, oh, I'm missing the conversation.
Yeah. I know that there are people who are watching on Facebook, because then they can just sort of be, just listen and just hear what others are saying. But I think that this platform really, the reason I do it is really to hear other people exchange ideas. And so that's really important to have other people struggle with the ideas of others and pick up some and bring some, so I think, because I think all of us have, it's wisdom of crowds, all of us will always be smarter than any one of us, so putting that together to me, that's the point of this platform. But I think you bring up one point that I think we would be remiss if we didn't follow up on, Crystal, and that is kind of, it seems like you're alluding to, well, how do we act? It's one thing to say, in my heart, I'm tolerant, okay, but what do we do? Let's say we find something that say, I really can't hang with that. Okay, so what's our next step? Is it like polite rejection? Is it, I think the new word now is cancel culture. Do you just say, hey, just that person, they're done? My grandmother had a very interesting ritual she did. Speaking of cancel culture, she was a very, you could say, tolerant person, and she would stand a whole bunch of things. But if you got on her last nerve,
Oh yeah.
she would write your name on a piece of toilet paper and flush it.
Oh.
And then after that, you were a non-existent person. You could talk to
You
her.
had your chance.
You could talk to her, and it was just like you're a ghost that you didn't see. It's like she just completely disappeared you, so that was my first introduction to what cancel culture could have been. But they didn't have the word for it then, but maybe they should call it flesh culture,
Yeah. Last night too, and I'm like, I always say, oh, I've got an open door and all this. You can come to my office, come to my home, have a cup of coffee, visit. But like, you have a tolerance there too. Last night there was some stranger knocking on our door at like 10 at night. And we were peeking out at him, but we couldn't see him. We couldn't really hear what he was trying to say. So my sister came and got me out of the bedroom. She's like, somebody's on the front porch. So I was like, what do they want? She was like, I can't hear them. We're scared. So I'm like, I'm just calling the cops. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not putting up with it. So I get on the phone. I call the police. I'm like, there's this weird guy on our porch. We don't know who he is. I'm not opening the door. I'm not, and maybe if it was daylight, it would have been different. But I don't know. So that's just kind of thinking about, tolerating the unknown, because the fear, there is some fear involved in tolerating intolerance.
Exactly. I think it's mostly about fear.
I think so too, yeah. Unknown,
Yeah, yeah. The
that's a
unknown,
good example.
and sometimes the known. It's a known fear. You know why you're afraid of that person or that thing or that idea.
Yeah,
You feel the threat, and you've identified the threat, and you've even seen examples of the threat being carried out. So you know
yeah,
what?
like I'm not going there.
Exactly. I'm not going there, and I'm not. And yes, I am intolerant of that. So it's
Yeah,
like, so I think that the kind of conversation that the reason for thinking about bringing this subject up is to have each of us challenge our own idea about what it is that we would tolerate. Where do we personally draw our line of tolerance? Why do we draw it there? And then do we try to extend our ability to tolerate? What's the basis? Let's say if this thing is a threat to people, and you just say, look, not only can I not, I should not tolerate that, because this person or this idea will hurt other people. How do you evaluate that it will hurt other people? And should people, as the movie was talking about, if people are just hurting themselves, you know it's one thing to tolerate it, say, hey, look, I can advise you, you know not to stick your hand on that red hot iron, but hey, it's okay if you want to do that. I'm not gonna risk burning myself to save you after I've told you, you know, or even given you evidence by dropping a piece of paper on that and watching it go up in flames. Now, if you do that and you decide, nah, I don't think so,
yeah.
I believe that I can walk on those flames, and there are people who believe that,
There are
and they
people who
walk.
do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so once they see those people, but then they're really surprised when, in their case, they get blisters.
Yeah,
But hey, but it's their choice, you know. So who am I to say no? You can't walk on those flames, and I'm going to keep you from walking on the flame. Well,
yeah,
try it. You know?
I
yeah.
I have a 3-point system with personal people. When we were doing when we were doing foster care, it was Department of Corrections. Department of Corrections might be different than the regular. I don't know, but with these boys, we had 17 of them, and they knew point blank that there was a 3-point system. They knew it when I was teaching, and they knew that number 3 was on my last nerve. I'm gonna have to use that toilet tissue. That's nice. Uh, Number 3 was on getting on my last nerve, and I would someone would say something, I'd say that's 1, and then we would have a conversation, and then we would go from there. Uh, I I have had people that have done things to me, and I just look at them and say, that I apologize to them because it's my fault, definitely my fault, because I did not take the time to let you know that that is not what I will tolerate. It's my fault for not teaching you how to respect me. So, having told you this now, I expect that there will be no more of this. And then if there's something else that goes on, well, then they get to 2, and then most people don't get to 3. But the understanding of being tolerant of a lot of different things, and cancel culture, you see January 6th as being a very good example of tolerating a lot of different things, and it goes so deep, and that's why all this year is going to be cause and effect. I mean, cause and effect equals, and people can end up putting whatever they want in there, but cause and effect, whether it's what happened to Native folks, what happened to Black folks, what happened to Black Wall Street, what happened to women, it's all cause and effect. And at some point in time, everybody's going to have to not have our conversation and sit back and go to a retreat and wake up at 8 o'clock or 9 or whatever, have some coffee or tea, and then go down that rabbit hole, because the rabbit hole extends deeper than anybody would know. And I think that with tolerance has a lot to do with where we go. Because everything is personal, everything is political. That person that wants to go ahead and commit suicide is on my number 2 part, because it will affect me. I cannot just say you aren't important. You are important. You might be the person that really opens up and says, you know, all this about cancer, it can be cured with a banana, and just go from there. So everything and every person is important and needs to be, in my opinion, embraced. I still like the word embrace instead of tolerant. So
Very nice, very nice, and a very nice way to kind of wrap this up. I hope you guys will extend your thought processes around where you find your balance between tolerance and intolerance. A word about next week. We're going to have a special guest. Rebecca Cruz is going to be our guest, and she's another one of my sisters. And she is a deputy director of the South Dakota Arts Council. And she's going to be talking to us about how arts helps to build the human connection and what the Arts Council is doing, what their role is. But we're going to be talking about, you know, what role does art play in connecting us? And I think that'll be a very good discussion. So I invite you to come back next week, but also bring somebody, because there are a lot of people who really do need to hear about art and how they should start getting involved with arts in their communities. Because a lot of people, they think they don't like art, and they're swimming in it all the time, you know, and they're making choices based on the arts all the time, but they have mischaracterized art in their lives. So we'll see you next week, same time, same station, you know, and so think about intolerance. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.